Welcome to the channel. Today we are discussing a tragedy that shook the community of Wallasey Village in England on Christmas Eve 2022. This is the story of Ellie Edwards, a young woman whose life was cut short in a senseless act of violence.
In this video, we're talking about a tragedy that happened in England. On Christmas Eve 2022, 26-year-old Ellie Edwards was out with her friends at the Lighthouse Pub in Wallasey Village on the Wirral. It was meant to be a night of celebration. Instead, it became the last night of her life. Ellie wasn't a stranger to hard work or kindness. She was 26 years old and worked as a beautician at Nova Studio Beauty Salon and also as a dental nurse. The people around her, colleagues, clients, friends, loved her. She had a way of making people feel comfortable and seen. Her father, Tim Edwards, later tried to put into words what Ellie meant to those who knew her. How can I explain what she was like to people who didn't know her?
She was great, beautiful, kind, always giving, always looking out for people, especially her family. She was bubbly, always laughing. She set goals for herself and she was achieving them, and she did it all with a smile. On the evening of December 24th, Ellie went to the Lighthouse Pub with her sister, who had flown in from Dubai to spend Christmas and New Year with their family. Ellie was meeting friends there, and CCTV footage later showed her enjoying the night, hugging people, smiling, laughing. She and her friends danced, sang, and spent the evening exactly how you'd expect on Christmas Eve. Nothing about that night felt unusual. Nothing felt unsafe. Just before midnight, everything changed. Shortly after 11:50 p.m., police received multiple reports of gunshots near the pub. Officers quickly arrived and sealed off the area. Investigators later confirmed that at least 12 shots had been fired toward the pub entrance, where Ellie and others had been gathered. Detective Superintendent Sue Pyan spoke at a news conference on Christmas Day. Tragically, the victim, a 26-year-old woman, suffered a serious gunshot wound to the head. She was taken to Arrow Park Hospital, but sadly passed away shortly afterwards. Her family have been informed, and on what should be a day spent celebrating with loved ones, they are now coming to terms with this devastating loss. She went on to explain that at that stage, police did not believe Ellie had been targeted. She was out enjoying Christmas with her sister and friends at what should have been a peaceful time. What her family are now going through is impossible to imagine. Witnesses later told police they saw a gunman fire into the front entrance of the pub before fleeing the scene in a dark-colored vehicle. The woman who lost her life that night was Ellie Edwards. Police later said they did not believe Ellie had been the intended target of the attack. 4 men were also injured that night. A 28-year-old man from nearby Beechwood suffered serious injuries, while the other 3 men, aged 22, 24, and 33, were treated for injuries that were not life-threatening. For Ellie's family, her death was devastating. Early on Christmas morning, her father, Tim Edwards, woke up to the kind of news no parent is ever prepared for. It didn't make sense to him. Just hours earlier, he had been talking to Ellie. They'd spoken about her plans for the night and about spending Christmas Day together, wrapping presents as a family. Now everything had changed. Overwhelmed with grief, Tim was left trying to understand how this could have happened and how he was supposed to carry on without his daughter. At the same time, police were working urgently to identify the gunman and bring him to justice. They began reviewing CCTV footage and appealing to witnesses who might have seen or recorded something important. In a Facebook post, Merseyside Police Detective Superintendent David McCullen said, "We have a number of officers in Wallasey Village carrying out extensive inquiries to establish exactly what has taken place and to take immediate action. I would ask anyone who was in the lighthouse in Wallasey Village last night and witnessed the incident, or who has mobile phone or CCTV footage, to contact us as a matter of urgency, as it may be vital to our investigation. We believe the gunman left the pub car park in a dark-colored vehicle, possibly a dark-colored Mercedes, shortly after the shooting.
We are keen to hear from anyone who may have seen this vehicle and asked them to contact us.
Immediately, investigators later confirmed that CCTV footage showed a dark Mercedes arriving at the car park beside the pub. The driver parked in a position where he could see inside the building and leave quickly. He sat there for a short time watching. Then he got out of the car, approached from the side, and within moments fired 12 shots. He ran back to the Mercedes and drove away from the scene. With that, police were left searching for answers. Who was this man? Who was he aiming for? And what was the motive? Officers began patrolling the surrounding streets as the investigation intensified. Officers began going door to door, speaking with residents in the area and gathering any information they could. 2 days later, police announced the arrest of 2 suspects, a 30-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman. Their names were not released, and both were later freed. Authorities confirmed that the man who was arrested was not the person who fired the gun. Police spokesperson Conley addressed the case publicly, saying, "We will not rest until we bring the offenders to justice, and by that I mean the person who pulled the trigger in such an indiscriminate way. Anyone who helped arrange this, who assisted, sheltered this individual, or who continues to withhold information about who carried this out or where the weapon is, we will be relentless. We owe that to Ellie and her family." As the investigation continued, reports began to surface that the shooting may have been linked to an ongoing dispute between local rival groups. Police later confirmed that Ellie had been a random victim. When asked whether the shooting could be directly connected to a feud, Kitley said officers had seen tensions building over several months. Investigators later identified the intended targets as Jake Duffy and Kieran Solked, though we'll come back to them shortly. On December 29th, police arrested a third suspect. Like the others, he was not believed to be the gunman. His name was not made public, but he was charged with conspiracy to commit a crime. Around the same time, police tracked down the dark Mercedes used to escape the scene, but when they found it, there was a problem. CCTV footage from December 31st, 1 week after Ellie's death, shows the car on fire. The bright flashes in the video are flames. Investigators believe the gunman set the vehicle alight after realizing police were closing in, destroying evidence that could have been recovered during a search. The Mercedes was left completely burned out, reduced to twisted metal. Even so, police were able to identify it. They later confirmed the car had been stolen, likely taken specifically to be used in the attack. Nearly 2 weeks later, on January 11th, police announced further arrests. A 22-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman were detained in Central Wales. The man was named as Connor Chapman, and investigators revealed he had a long criminal record. These 5 photos show Connor Chapman at different points in his life. Over the years, he went from a petty offender to the main suspect in the death of Ellie Edwards. Before this case, Chapman had already been arrested for a long list of offenses. These included aggravated vehicle taking, threatening behavior, burglary, disorderly conduct, and a high-speed police chase that ended with him hiding in bushes and telling officers he was waiting for his mate. Chapman grew up on the Wood Urch estate in Birkenhead and mostly lived with his grandparents. He attended Wood Urch High School but left before sitting his exams. His first court appearance was in 2014 when he was just 14 years old after being caught shoplifting. 2 years later, in 2016,
He appeared in court again, this time for being on enclosed premises and driving a stolen car. Not long after, he breached a conditional discharge and was caught driving without a license or insurance. In 2017, his record continued to grow. He was arrested for car theft, possession of illegal substances, and breaching a criminal behavior order that banned him from entering certain parts of the world. Then, in 2018, police detained him again, this time for possession of a prohibited substance and carrying a weapon in a public place. That same year, his name began appearing in local newspapers after a failed attempt to escape from police. Officers spotted a stolen Audi and tried to stop it, but the driver refused to pull over.
Chapman, who was 18 at the time, drove at around 60 miles per hour in a 30-mile zone, crossed into oncoming traffic, and eventually crashed into the curb. He abandoned the car and ran. When police found him hiding in nearby bushes, he told them, "I'm waiting for my mate." In court, Chapman's lawyer said he was easily influenced by older peers and had struggled with health issues, including ADHD and other medical diagnoses. Chapman pleaded guilty to dangerous driving, aggravated vehicle taking, driving while disqualified, and breaching a criminal behavior order. He was sentenced to 8 months in a young offender institution and banned from driving for 2 years and 4 months. While handing down the sentence, recorder Mary Lamb spoke directly to him. "You have a bad record despite your young age. You have been given every possible chance, and it seems to me you have no regard at all for other people." People with the same diagnosis Chapman had do not behave the way he did. They don't repeatedly cause harm or put the public at risk. By the time he turned 18, Chapman already had 14 convictions for 30 separate offenses. It was clear that his behavior wasn't changing, but there were limited legal options to keep him away from the public for long periods. In January 2020, a court sentenced him to 10 months in prison for possessing stolen property and carrying a weapon in a public place. Records also show that Merseyside police issued public appeals for information about his whereabouts on at least 5 occasions when he was wanted. At one point, Chapman himself said he had spent more time in custody than out. By the age of 20, his record had grown to 19 convictions for 43 offenses. He was released from prison in the summer of 2022, around 6 months before Ellie Edwards was killed. While he was still in prison, his first child was born and his partner was expecting their second. Chapman later told a jury that he wanted to grow up and start a new life, but his actions told a very different story. After his release, he became involved with a local gang. He dealt drugs, carried out another burglary, and stole 2 electric motorcycles. Even so, the worst crime was still ahead. On December 24, 2022, during an ongoing dispute between organized crime groups based on the Woodchurch and Beechwood estates, Chapman armed himself with a Scorpion submachine gun. He spent roughly 3 hours waiting outside the Lighthouse Pub in Wallasey, watching for Kieran Skeeld and Jake Duffy, who were members of a rival group. Just before midnight, Chapman opened fire, discharging 12 rounds. Both Skeeld and Duffy were seriously injured but survived. Ellie Edwards was standing nearby at the time. She didn't know either of them. She was simply there, spending Christmas Eve with close friends. 2 of the bullets struck her in the head, and she lost her life in an attack that was never meant for her. On January 25, 2023, Ellie's family, friends, and hundreds of members of the community gathered for her funeral. Despite the rain, local residents lined the streets as mourners arrived for the service at 12:30 p.m. The funeral procession was led by a horse carrying a floral tribute with her name, Ellie. Ellie's coffin was brought to the church in a carriage pulled by 4 white horses. It was carried inside by pallbearers, including her father, Tim, with a floral tribute resting on top. During the service, a message from Ellie's grandfather, George, was read out. He encouraged everyone to leave the church with hope still in their hearts. The Lighthouse Pub remained closed that day as a mark of respect. In a post on the pub's Facebook page, staff wrote that Ellie and her family had been in their thoughts over the past few weeks, and especially on that day. The message ended simply, "May she rest in peace." After Ellie's death, Tim Edwards spoke about his hope to start a foundation and his daughter's name focused on reducing gun violence. "There are no winners with gun crime," he said. "If you pick up a gun, your future is over, and so is the future of everyone around you. It's that simple. It's pointless. It solves nothing. I want something positive to come out of this. Ellie's name has to be used for good. She can't be forgotten. Connor Chapman later faced multiple charges, including causing Ellie Edwards' death. Police also identified an accomplice. 20-year-old Thomas Waring was charged with possession of a prohibited weapon and assisting an offender. Detectives established that after the shooting, Chapman drove the stolen Mercedes to Barnston, Merseyside, where Waring lived. CCTV from the area showed Chapman walking along the road and picking up the weapon after it fell to the ground. Although police never recovered the gun itself, they found Chapman's DNA on a bullet casing at the scene, as well as on a red glove recovered from Waring's home. The glove matched one worn by the gunman. In the early hours of Christmas morning at around 5 a.m., Waring ordered a taxi using a false name and gave only a vague pickup location. The taxi took Chapman back to Woodchurch, Merseyside. The two men then tried to cover their tracks. On New Year's Eve, they drove the stolen Mercedes to a remote location and set it on fire. Thomas Waring was found guilty on all charges. In July 2023, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Now, to briefly return to the people who were the intended targets of the attack. Jake Duffy and Kieran Skeeld. Both men were injured but survived. In this case, Jake Duffy and Kieran Solkett were victims, but looking at their lifestyles, it's clear they were already involved in dangerous situations. Both men were members of the Beechwood Gang. On December 23, 2022, the day before the shooting at the Lighthouse Pub, Duffy and Soldat assaulted a criminal linked to a group associated with Connor Chapman. While Chapman was later awaiting sentencing for the shooting, both Duffy and Skeeld were already in prison for their own offenses. Skeeld received a 27-month sentence for assault and an additional 9 months for affray to be served. At the same time, Duffy was sentenced to 2 years for assault along with 9 months for affray, also to run concurrently. The court also issued gang injunctions against both men. A full list of the restrictions can be seen on screen. Commenting on these injunctions, Chief Inspector Tom Welch said, "Gang-related activity has a deeply harmful impact on people who live and work in the areas where these crimes take place. It is often carried out recklessly with little regard for others." The injunctions served on Duffy and Soldat are part of our ongoing work to tackle serious and organized crime in Birkenhead. The restrictions in these orders are well known to our local officers and will be enforced strictly. If either man breaches the conditions, we can act quickly to arrest them and bring them back before the courts, which may result in prison sentences. He added that police are using every legal power available to disrupt gang activity, but that community support is essential. We can't do this alone. We rely on people to tell us about criminal activity in their area so we can take action. Working together makes a real difference. It's also important to note that even before the shooting, Chapman had been banned from entering the area where the Lighthouse Pub is located. Despite that, he chose that exact location to carry out the attack that ultimately took Ellie Edwards' life. Some people believe cases like this highlight the need for stronger laws, more effective ways to deal with individuals who pose a serious risk to the public. That's a personal view, but you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. Connor Chapman denied any involvement. He claimed the man seen on the CCTV footage at the Lighthouse Pub was someone else and said that at the time of the shooting, he was at home wrapping Christmas presents. The evidence told a different story. Over the 3.5-week trial, the jury heard about the events leading up to the shooting, including a long-running feud between Chapman's gang from the Woodchurch estate and a rival group based around the Beechwood estate, where Skeeld and Duffy lived. Investigators also revealed what Chapman did after the attack. They found that he had initially planned to flee to Spain by car ferry. Before he could do that, police searched his grandparents' home. Realizing detectives were closing in, Chapman abandoned the ferry plan and instead headed to Wales. That's where armed officers later arrested him. During the trial, Chapman admitted he had access to the Mercedes seen on CCTV, but claimed it was a shared vehicle used by several gang members, mainly for drug dealing. He said other people had access to it and insisted he was not the one driving it on the night of the shooting. He also admitted to setting the car on fire, but said he did so only after learning that someone else from his gang had used it during the attack. Outside court, Ellie's father, Tim Edwards, spoke to reporters. He said he hoped the man who killed his daughter would never see Christmas again. "If I'm lucky enough to be around for a long time," he said, "I'll do everything I can to make sure he never comes out of prison." After 3 hours and 48 minutes of deliberation, a jury of 7 women and 5 men returned a unanimous verdict. Following 3.5 weeks of evidence at Liverpool Crown Court, they found Connor Chapman guilty. Sentencing Chapman, Mr. Justice Goose told him, "What you did, Connor Chapman, was both shocking and deeply wrong. You murdered Ellie Edwards and brought an end to her young life. In the days that followed, you set about removing or destroying evidence that would identify you as the gunman. You planned this as an act of revenge in a gang dispute with no regard for anyone else. The risks were obvious and they were extreme." On July 7, 2023, the court sentenced Connor Chapman to life in prison with a minimum term of 48 years before he can apply for parole. As the verdict was read out, Ellie's family quietly cried out in relief. Someone whispered yes, and her father, Tim Edwards, raised his fist. When he later spoke to journalists, Tim had just a few words to say. "I hope Ellie's legacy is something people can take some positivity from. She was a caring person, someone who gave more of her time to others than she ever gave to herself. If she's remembered for anything, I hope it's for her warmth and for the happy, carefree life she was living at just 26. She wouldn't want people sitting around feeling low or giving up. That just wasn't her. She'd want you to live the best life you can. That's how she treated people. She had a way of lifting your spirits without even trying. I was incredibly lucky to be her dad, but we were also best mates. We shared so many good memories, laughing, messing around, doing silly things together. Those moments mean everything to me. Some of them, well, they're probably not things you could ever put in print." If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant.